Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the God Theory Podcast. Thank you, friends, for joining us again. We're going to be talking about some heavy shit. Also, some hopefully elucidating stuff. So, I don't know. Should be a good episode, man. But before all that, how have you been, man? I know we just recorded another podcast, but I'm still wondering. How are you?
I have still been great.
Yeah?
Things have been well. I've been introducing family to the wonders of Colorado and the freedoms that we enjoy here.
Did you go to the Garden of the Gods?
We did, actually. Garden of the Gods, very nice place to just hang out. And I don't know, it was actually founded, get this, it was discovered, or at least the property was owned by a retired general from the Civil War, who was also a Quaker.
Really?
Yeah, not a combination you hear every day. Quaker general, since they're famously pacifists. But I guess I think his family was Quakers, and he was more of those like, I'm kind of a Quaker, but also I'll go to war to stop slavery.
So he kind of did his own thing. He kind of went and sowed his Quaker oats.
Yes. I'm way too excited about that joke.
That's good, because I was waiting to set it up. Okay.
Huh. You're like, come on. Yeah, so it was fun, and went to a store called Dank. I was looking for
what do they sell there, David?
I was looking for mildew removal stuff. Like I've got some mold coming in my bathroom. Yes. I was like, oh, there's a store called Dank here. I'll check that out because my bathroom is cold and wet.
Yeah. Okay.
Turns out though they have it was not that at all. It was a medicine called marijuana.
Really?
And apparently it helps with a lot of different things. Like there was a graph of all the things it could help me with, and I was like, well, I guess if I don't need a prescription, beats Ambien.
That's awesome. So you picked up some dank ass weed.
Dank, dank.
That's hilarious. Spank dank. That's hilarious. I can't believe you can just go to a store and pick up marijuana, and there's just different kinds. Like they're all laid out there for you.
Oh yeah, they walk you through it too, because apparently like 45% of their customers are from out of state, so they're just used to coming in.
Tourism.
Like, all right, this will affect you this way, this will happen to you this way. And it's everything. They got vaporizers, they got candy, they've got patches like the nicotine patch, but it's like a marijuana patch. You slap it on your skin, and then they were saying like the cool thing about this is if you feel like you're getting too much, like if you have edibles, right? You take too much of that, you just got to wait it out. There's nothing you can do, right?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, you can go to a back room and just huddle in and just
hide.
Think that you're dying for 2 hours. That's what I tried.
Did that work out pretty well?
No, dude, I just kept looking at the clock. I set a timer because of the time dilation. I set it, and I would just go. I would sit there and be like, I'd take as long as I could stand it, and I would just look back at the timer, and it was like 2 seconds, and I'd go, oh. Like I was hating life.
My subjective view of reality is forever altered.
Oh no.
Yeah, no. The patch, if that starts happening, you just take it off, and in a few minutes it wears off. So.
Wow.
They've got everything for every occasion. It was pretty fun.
That's something I should try, because that was not a pleasurable experience for me, and that was my only experience. So, I'd like to try it again. But
and apparently, different strains will do different things. Like there's some that make you really kind of up, and kind of sometimes it makes you paranoid. There's some that kind of make you relaxed. There's some that help you sleep. We probably should have asked what you were smoking that day, so we'd know to avoid it next time.
Yeah. Yeah, that's hilarious, man. God, when are we gonna get that? I can't believe. I think all that money that's not only filtering in from Colorado citizens, but now from, you said 45% tourism.
That's a lot of tourism, and in fact, because my cousin was here and he was kind of doing the math, and he's like, well, okay, he likes to drink, unwind at the end of the day, maybe drink some. Just doing the math on it, like the money spent, you can throw down. Let's see. I bought a vaporizer and a cartridge, so that was like $60, right? That'll last me a month.
Wow.
If I use it like every day.
Wow. Okay.
2 weeks to a month, depending on like how many times I'm using it every day. But like it goes a long way. I'm not even 10% through it, and I've just been working it. So economically, it makes sense. Health-wise, it certainly beats destroying your liver. I mean, alcohol isn't terrible for you, but the amounts that you have to drink, if you're drinking it every day, trying to get buzzed every day, like you're gonna get a beer belly if nothing else.
Yeah. Wow.
So I mean, there's no reason why you would ever not want it legal.
Yeah, I don't get that either because like if you look at Christianity, there's the keeping the body temple holy, that kind of thing, keeping your temple, holy, but that we assault it with alcohol, which is worse for you. So I can't imagine that that's a scripture that would get in the way. And then you look at like John, and every scholar I've ever read believed that John went to the Temple of Delphi and got super high when he wrote the Revelations, and that's believed to be the genesis of that document. Was he just got fucked up because those oracles would put something in a brazier or some kind of thing, and then they would put their head over it and they would breathe in the vapors, and then they would come up with these crazy, and they'd go on a crazy trip, and they were thought to be able to be the only ones that could get prophecies out of those trips. Everyone else could sure get high, but they wouldn't be.
And their prophecies were great because they were really good at making them vague enough that they couldn't lose, right? Like, hey, Oracle, can we go? Should we go attack this army? Should we go and battle on this day? Is that going to work out well for us? And then the Oracle like takes in the gas and then says, if you go to war on this day, a great empire will fall. And you're like, it was right, or no matter what happens, like it's unfalsifiable. It was great. Like it's actually really clever compared to biblical prophecies, which just didn't work or were written after the fact, like the ex facto, post facto kind of prophecies. But like the Delphi ones, they knew what they were doing. They just keep it vague enough. You're gonna win no matter what. It's like an Myers-Briggs test.
Yeah, that's cool. So John apparently was doing it wrong. He just got super high, just wrote literally what he saw. He's like, "There's people barfing out toads in their mouth."
Yeah,
Fuck!
I feel like he found some hallucinogenics, right? Like that's definitely a bad triv. The scorpions with little helmets, and they fly around, and the stings are big as lances, man. They're big as lances.
That beast has like 7 faces. He's just losing his shit, just writing furiously.
And now 6 crowns on 10 faces. Why? And he's just like,
what? Doesn't make any sense. He's just writing furiously. The world must know.
The world must know. It's
what you tripped about, John.
It's infallible.
Chill. Yeah. That was a spiritual. Sure it was. By yourself though. Don't call it prophecy.
Yeah.
But whatever. That's weird.
That's what we've been doing. Just enjoying freedom.
Oh man, I've been enjoying not much, man. I've just been doing some jiu-jitsu. I got a tournament possibly coming up I might get into. That's exciting, right? White belt tournament for us really shitty people. Here's the worst part though. So I don't know whose bright idea this was. It's actually kind of smart because jiu-jitsu is a grappling, martial art, right? Like it's about getting someone to the ground and then breaking their arms or getting them in a dominant position where you can pummel them. Well, there's different belts, right? Just like every martial arts system. Okay, well, let's do a tournament. Except the tournament can only be won by submitting the other person. So they have to tap basically, right? So choke them or go to break their arm, right? We're not punching. Yeah, safe. Use your safe words.
Right.
And now it just feels homoerotic. But
so you submit to the alpha or the dominant.
You just get super hot, and then whoever's on top is usually is just going to town, and you're just defending. Defending the whole time
until you submit.
Yeah, until you submit. So anyway, so their bright idea was this: let's do submissions, right? Let's do it submission only because jiu-jitsu is supposed to be an empirical martial art, right? Like this, they came to America and said, "I challenge everybody who's ever been a master at anything to come fight me, bare knuckles, no holds barred in my gym. I will beat you." And then that's how they got such a big following because they did. And they started the UFC, the Gracie family, the jiu-jitsu people, and they said, we want the best in the entire world now because we kicked everyone's ass on the West Coast. And so people came from Russia all over. They kicked all their asses. They're still undefeated. Best martial art. So so they're really obsessed with like making sure you can prove yourself before you can get any, tournaments or get a belt. You have to beat all white belts, to get the next belt. And so that sounds like a great idea, except you take submissions, which are tough to do, and you take the fact that we're white belts, so we're not really great at doing them, and you get a mixture of complete ineptitude rolling around. So what happens is one of the longest matches was 58 minutes last time. 58 minutes of like heavy exertion. It's like heavy lifting weights. You're that tired. Like going 6 minutes feels like you're about to die. So 58 is like I'm not looking forward to that.
I saw a documentary once called The Karate Kid. And my advice I got from that was to find an old immigrant mentor, maybe from the Far East, maybe Japan, and just kind of learn philosophy / crane kicks. Do they allow crane kicks in jiu-jitsu? Because that seems to be the key.
Yeah, I'll give that a shot. I'll see. I'll bring that to the mat next time. We'll see what happens. Yeah, no, that guy just wanted shit cleaned in his house. I can't believe he duped him. What a nerd. Well, he did about as much sparring than as Rocky did. I don't know if you noticed this, but they had a Rocky marathon over July 4th because, of course, America. Mm-hmm. And that guy, you know, during his training montages, which are sweet, he never spars. He's not fighting. Like he
fights meat in like a locker.
Yeah, and he does CrossFit. That's not gonna get you ready to fight Apollo Creed or
well, I mean,
Trogor.
His skill was just getting punched really hard and being able to keep fighting. Yeah, so I mean, how do you practice that? In fact, the more you practice it, the worse you probably get at it. You only have so much. So he's probably reserving that.
So although, he probably knows what he's doing.
Did you see they're doing a sequel called Creed? It's about like Apollo Creed's son.
Yeah,
it looks kind of good.
I want to see it.
I mean,
are you telling me that they're rebooting something from the 80s? Are you sure you think it'll be good?
Well, I mean, it's not going to be Gem and the hologram's good, but it's going to be good.
Yeah. Oh, man. How do you mess up the Ninja Turtles? That's what I'm wondering. How did you mess that up? Like, you've got generations.
Objectively, how do you make that good in the first place? They're ninjas that are also turtles and they're teenagers.
I've got no idea.
Like that formula is so specifically, like the Goldilocks zone for that formula is so small that it's a miracle we hit it at all, and any deviation is going to make it suck.
No, that's what I said. I can't remember if they said they were getting high or drunk, but they stayed up all night one night and just drew pictures. And the next day they were like, "What the hell is this?" And they're like, "Oh, we just thought of the most absurd idea: a ninja, but mixed with like a turtle. Wouldn't that be hilarious?" And they're like, "Oh, Ninja Turtles."
Same ooze that mutated the turtles. That accident also created Daredevil.
What
happened in Hell's Kitchen? Yeah, the if you look at the original comics, like those vials of mutagen that spilled everywhere. That was the accident where Daredevil pushed somebody out of the road. That's why they spilled into the thing, and like that's also what gave him like his superpowers.
Oh, what?
Yeah, there's a little Daredevil Ninja Turtles tie-in.
Oh man, that's awesome. Huh?
Which means they technically exist in the Marvel universe.
That's absurd. If they show up at the next Avengers fight, I'm going to lose my shit.
They're going to be in the Avengers, yes.
That's what I'm hearing you say.
Thor's like dropping turtles on things. Yeah, that's going to be
great. Oh, man. Okay. Yeah, so other than that, though, I guess we can get into our subject, talking about superstitious behaviors.
Wait, let's talk about religious news because I want to point out some more awesome things happening in Arkansas right now.
I don't think I can handle this if it's 2 minutes. You're on a roll, dude.
Yeah, I don't know where to begin. Can we just talk about Huckabee, how he's going to stand up to gay marriage if he's elected president?
Oh, good. Someone needs to, right? I mean,
yeah.
It's been running rampant for millennia.
He called the decision an out-of-control act of unconstitutional judicial tyranny by 5 unelected lawyers, and he's gonna, take care of that because he doesn't know how the federal government works with checks and balances.
Yeah, wait a minute. I'm not as savvy on political science as you are, but I'm pretty sure there's a lot wrong there, isn't there?
Yeah, so think back to your junior high when you're taking civics or American government or whatever they call the class. Now remember, there's the executive branch. That's what Huckabee wants to be.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't know it's called that. He just knows it's called the president, but it's actually the executive branch.
Okay.
There's also something called the judicial branch. And there's the legislative branch, okay? So while the president can veto laws, he actually doesn't get to interpret the Constitution. That's actually what the Supreme Court's job is. These black-robed, unelected judges, as he calls them, they're actually called the Supreme Court, and their job is actually doing exactly what he's complaining about. So him being elected president's not going to change things. And that's how the Arkansas public education system has... I don't know how we managed to get out of it unscathed because I remember learning that in Arkansas.
Yeah, you're saying that, and I was like, yeah, this is all stuff I know. This doesn't seem terribly...
I mean, you're not running for president, but you're aware of these concepts, right?
Yeah.
So that happened. Also, in Arkansas, because we live in one of the best states, are you familiar with the Satanic League of Satanists or whatever they call themselves? The Evil League of Evil?
By
Satanic Temple.
Yeah, topped Lucius Greaves.
Yes. What a great name, right? Like, doesn't he sound like he should be Slytherin, like protection against the dark arts?
Yeah, he seems like a guy who would show up in like just a dark hoodie at some point and talk all mystically.
Greetings, I am Lucius. Like, did he change his name to that? Like I would, if I was the leader of the Satanists, I would change
Oh
my
man,
name to Lucius.
I would make it so that I would just change the words to like anytime I had to like Google Hangouts him or something, I would call it a seance just to use that because seance for Lucius Greaves to summon him.
Or Damien. Damien's a good Satan name.
Yeah, Damien.
But okay, so
Mr. Greaves.
Mr. Greaves has challenged Arkansas Senator Jason Rapert. I'm going to pronounce it Rapert. I don't know how it's pronounced, but I think it's funnier to say Rapert. Jason Rapert, out of Conway, where I used to live. He's a senator, and he refuses to debate Lucius of the Satanic Temple, calling it a publicity stunt. Now, why does Lucius want to debate our esteemed Senator Rapert?
Rapert.
Do you know what's been going on with him?
I remember he's been standing up against something, but I don't recall what it was.
10 Commandments on the Capitol grounds. He wants to leave
That's
it
what it was.
there because he also doesn't know how the government works. A lot of people manage to get jobs in this thing that's just a mystery to them. Like it's a hazy mystery. They know it's something about laws, and that's about it, I think. He sponsored a bill in March that would allow the monument of the 10 Commandments to be displayed at the Capitol, and then it was signed into law by Governor Asa Hutchinson, who I can't believe is still around. Like I remember when I was a little kid, he was the governor. But
yeah.
Anyway, the Supreme Court ruled that they have to be removed. The Oklahoma Supreme Court said that the 10 Commandments in Oklahoma State should be removed, and now other states are kind of like that's kind of a precedent other states are looking at. Like it's the writing's kind of on the wall there.
Yeah.
But
or the writing's being taken off the wall.
Oh,
all right.
But
that's why you keep me around those zingers, right?
If you leave it there, you have to make it open to everybody, which is something that's kind of hard to understand. So the Satanic Temple is on the ball. They're like, you know what? Cool. We want to put our religious stuff up there. It's a statue of Baphomet, who is pretty much looks like how Christians imagine Satan. He's like an evil goat man with like adoring children like on his lap, like receiving wisdom from him. It's fantastic. And so anyway, he wants to debate him over this and some other stuff. And this is what Rapert says. My position is made clear in the law I sponsored and voted for. The devil is a liar. Why would I want to debate anyone who worships a liar?
That's a solid defense. I don't see any way around that. That's a good point.
Yes, except there was a great way around that.
Wait, what?
Lucius actually wrote a letter back to him that basically was the most fantastic bit of like just political slamming, like political burns.
Oh, okay.
Did you see that?
I didn't read the whole thing. No, I read I skimmed it.
Okay, let me pull out some highlights because it's fantastic. So he gives the background following the Oklahoma Supreme Court decision. You know, they have to move it. We want to put a Baphomet there. And he says, you, Senator Jason Rapert, were the lead sponsor of the 10 Commandments bill. You are openly dismissive of the very idea that other religious groups may enjoy the privileges you clearly intend to benefit the Christian perspective alone, and you've been particularly denigrating of the Satanic Temple. Speaking from ignorance, blah, blah, blah. Let's get to where he gets to the sweet burns. In fact, you, Senator Rapert, have gone on record saying that minority rights aren't inalienable, but rather grant the whim of we the majority. You seem to display outright contempt for free expression and religious pluralism. Unconscionably, you seem to have absolutely no grasp on the concept of government viewpoint neutrality. And then he says, you know, so I want to debate you. And then he quotes him saying the devil's a liar. Why would I want to debate anyone who worships a liar? He says, setting aside the fact that the Satanic Temple is non-theistic, worshipping no god or gods, and eschewing supernaturalism, your question is still puzzling and unclear. Are you, Senator Jason Rapert, saying that you will not debate me because I am steeped in lies? Is this not, in fact, the best reason to debate somebody? To shine the light of truth upon lies and or misinformation? Should not a senator take the time to define for the people of Arkansas to what degree he believes the government should act as arbiters of proper religious and or political expression? Can you, Senator Rapert, justify your apparent disregard of minority rights, free speech, and religious freedom for all within the boundaries of constitutional authority? It's not a matter of general concern that a public official is openly suggesting viewpoint discrimination to the benefit of his own personal tribal affiliations? Many legal scholars agree. Once the state opens a door for one public display, it's opened them to them all. And so he kind of goes on about that. And he says, the idea that such a debate would give me undue publicity is also clearly ludicrous. Nearly every news outlet in Arkansas has already written of the Satanic Temple's possible monument bid. You, Senator Rayford, already openly argue against the legitimacy of our claims. If you are truly confident in the accuracy of your constitutional interpretation and the faultiness of my own position, you should gladly welcome the opportunity to correct me publicly, for I am not alone in my convictions. To willfully turn one's back on questions of such fundamental significance, when put to the question, is enormously irresponsible and contemptible. It's simply difficult to believe that you could truly be as spineless and as craven as that. So he's just insulting him constantly while calling into question, why are you trying to avoid this debate? It's fantastic.
That's awesome.
Oh, Lucian. Well played, sir. Well played.
Well done. The devil delights in your works.
The devil. The greatest trick the devil ever played was tricking us into thinking he did not exist. That's my favorite verse in the Bible.
That's good. That's a good Bible verse. It came out of First David Ivergy.
First Pop Culture, section 3, chapter 5.
Like God only helps those who help themselves. I love that one.
Yes.
I'm like, that doesn't. Where did you get that? And
My
like,
favorite
it's in the Bible.
one is, love the sinner, hate the sin.
Yeah, that's it. Where is that? Don't you read the Bible? Yes, I've read the Bible frequently. Yes, it's not in there.
It's like, I've read it. It says something about loving thine enemies, doing good for them that curse you. Inasmuch as you've done it unto the least of these thy brethren, you have done it unto me. Kind of feels like you should be not be dicks to gay people. But yeah, you can also quote non-Bible at me if you want.
That's also very productive. Thank you.
So let's talk about superstitions. What's the deal? Like, why are we talking about this on a religious show?
Oh, I don't know. It's almost like superstition comes up a lot. See, people use that like interchangeably for religious beliefs. Do you agree with that analogy, like superstition and religion?
I believe that people use superstition to describe religions that they are not raised in or a part of.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so it's sort of like that idea of Ricky Gervais when he says, "I'm an atheist of out of the 7,000 gods, I believe in none of them. You believe in You don't believe in 6,999, so you're very much almost an atheist, as much of an atheist as me."
Yeah,
it's
religion is just what you call mythology when you are not living in that time, or when you are mythology is what you call religions that you were not around for.
Yeah, you didn't realize how seriously people took these.
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, I see a lot of parallels there. I do. I think it's. I feel like a lot of this is at least sustained by superstition, the same things that drive superstition. So like, superstition, you get like, like don't walk under a ladder, right? Don't break a mirror. You'll have bad luck. It's based on some weird. Now, what's not clear to me is whether the theory comes first and then the confirmation, when it originated, or whether it was backwards, like it happened and they thought, I wonder why this is happening to me. Must have been that crazy mirror I dropped when I was moving, like, I don't know. Oh, you're muted, dude. Yeah.
It's kind of like knock on wood, right? Like you ask where that came from and they'll say, oh, they used to believe there were nymphs or tree spirits and you could they would ward off bad luck if you would summon them by knocking on like a tree or something. And so you knock on a desk, there might still be a tree spirit in there. And they might come out and ward off knowledge. Now, did that happen and then people started doing it and then they started noticing results? Or did they notice results and then sort of backwards logic their way into, oh, that was a tree spirit that saved me back then?
Yeah, it's almost irrelevant in it's an interesting question, but it's almost irrelevant as far as like the part that I have to contribute, which is just, how this crap happens. And I think a lot of people are familiar with the pigeon studies, right? Like of Skinner, good old Burek Skinner.
Yes. This is what I like to call creating pigeon religions 101. How would you create a pigeon religion? How would you create a cargo cult of pigeons if you were to do so?
Yes, if I wanted to have an uprising of pigeons, I would actually, they do this sort of thing. This is incredible. I don't know. I'm sure this audience is pretty well informed with behaviorism, or at least the idea of it. This guy named B.F. Skinner, actually before him, John Watson comes along. He trains animals for Barnum and Bailey. Mm-hmm. And he's like, at the same time, he also believed this stuff worked on humans, and he tried it as well. And, on humans, and he had a great success. So all of a sudden he's like, yeah, but he never really applied it so much. He actually quit academia and went into advertising, because you can make a lot of money selling this stuff, and he became very wealthy. But there's another guy who was a lot more stuck on the science of it. Skinner comes after him, and he's like, well, I think this stuff just probably has some more has more direction to be, or so much more juice to be pulled out of it. So he just starts experimenting like crazy with pigeons because they're everywhere, right? And they're easy to get, and nobody really has a lot of problems with experimentation on pigeons.
They're rats with wings, essentially. So
yeah, and you're not euthanizing them afterwards or anything. It's just you're just kind of effing with their behavior a little, but yeah.
You're just making them religious and then setting them loose.
Maybe they did start an uprising. Who knows? Because what they would do is, this is funny, they would put them in a Skinner box, or an operating conditioning chamber is what it's called. And the necessary parts are just like, the box, a light, a lever, and a little food dispensary part. So the light comes on, that there's a reason for that later. That's much more advanced. It has to do with discriminative stimulus and stuff, but we won't talk about that here. But basically, what happens if you get a hungry pigeon? They get super curious, just like humans, right? Like, if I left you alone and, I don't know, my basement for like 3 days, you may get curious and decide to go look for food. A story we told on here making fun of JT. But no, I mean, if I left you in my house and, like, let's say I got in a car wreck or something, like, over time, you'd be like, man, I'm hungry. And you start looking around, right? It's that very natural biological process. And so they would do that, and they start pecking around as pigeons do, or mice, they'll stick their little nose in like holes. So they use a little hole rather than a little lever, or they put a lever to touch. Do a little hole to stick your nose in, and eventually they do it, and a little pellet comes out, and they're like, "Fuck yes, I was crazy hungry," and they eat it. So that's reinforcement. And then later they're like, or not later, immediately they're like, "Man, I want another one pellets. That wasn't enough to touch it, right?" So anyway, operating conditioning chamber just studies that. Now the crazy thing is that's just called a fixed interval. So that's like an interval, or I'm sorry, a fixed ratio. So every time they touch that little lever, it pops out. And you guys can Google stuff. I won't belabor you with the long explanations, but it just means every time you do it, it's fixed. So it's not like random. It's literally every time you do it, you can expect it. And ratio being based on your behavior. So he hits a little lever, every time he does, a little thing comes out. Great. But then they started fucking with him, right? Because, psychology. And what they decided to do was make it variable. So that means like random. So between 1 to 10 lever presses, I believe it was 1 to 10, but somewhere in that region, it would be between one lever press and it would come out, or you'd have to tap it twice and it would come out, or 3 times, or all the way up to 10. You had to hit that puppy 10 times for something to come out. And the rat didn't know, and neither did the pigeon. So they're like, oh. So they just start, like, they hit it, and they're like, what the fuck? I just hit it, and this pellet came out, now nothing. So they hit it again, They start looking around, like, what the fuck? They hit it again. And because they did those exact 3 things, right, or whatever they decided to do. Some turned around, some like ducked a little, some of them like flapped their wings, whatever it was they did. They believed was causal for them getting that food pellet. So let's say he flapped his wings twice, kind of frustrated, and then pecked it 3 times real fast, and it came out. He was like, oh shit, because the random number was 3 that time. He's like, oh. Okay, so before I pecked this puppy, but now I got to flap my wings and then peck 3 times real fast to get it. So he tries that again, obviously, because he's still fucking hungry. So he flaps his wings, pecks 3 times, and let's say the random number on this one was 1. Well, that was a self-fulfilling prophecy. You thought you had to peck 3 times real fast, but it came out the first time. But still, we still think it's causal, and we think it's permanent. It's just something weird about us. So we think, well, it came out right away, but I still think you need to flap and tap 3 times. But then let's say the random number is like 10. Now you get the crazy shit. So or 7 or whatever. So this guy, he already thinks, okay, I tap it once and I flap my wings and I tap 3 times fast, and well, shit, that was 4 times and nothing happened. And then it kind of goes, what the hell? So it does it again. It taps, flaps, and it taps 3 times, and then bam, because it was 7, it comes out. And the thing comes out and it's like, oh, I just have to do that crazy ritual twice, that ritual I just did, that flapping of the wings, tapping, no big deal. But then, and you keep doing that. Now what they would do, and this is fucked up, they would turn on those chambers with that random number and leave it overnight, and they'd come back, and a bunch of them. So like imagine the whole wall, there's like 20 pigeons doing this in 20 different chambers. You get the craziest shits. The grad students come back in and flip on the lights, and these pigeons are acting out of hand. They're just ridiculous. They're like, some of them are like cawing like over and over, like they're like turn, duck, duck, slap, tap, turn. And the funny thing is, these were persistent to the point where even, you get all these crazy ones. Like this one just doing like this the whole time and just like kept doing that. And then it would tap it once and it would do it again.
Yeah, you're bobbing your head for the people who are listening.
Oh, yeah. Sorry. Yeah, so I'm bobbing my head. It's just weird shit that pigeons do. It's something they tried, and suddenly they believe that it was causal. And so the funny thing is they're all doing something different, but they're all persistently doing it. And what's funny is they even got to the point where they would do it even after the pellet came out. They would still complete the ritual. So like, let's say it rolled a 1 out of a 1 to 10. It rolled a 1. So they peck it the first time. It falls down, and they're like, well, shit, I got to finish this up real quick so I can eat. So then they'd flap their wings, peck it 3 times, flap the wings, flap the times, and turn around, and then they'd eat. And so they begin, like, we have a very strong bias to assigning causality and then assigning that permanent causality. We're not real great, or at least animals are not real great at differentiating those two things.
And this turned out to be horrifically terrible for our ancestors, for our Bronze Age ancestors, because one thing that I've seen, every pigeon comes up with their own dance, and we see different religions popping up in different parts of the world, because that's kind of our superstitious little things that we do. But what's terrifying about primitive man, or ancient man, our ancestors, is how often human sacrifice added itself into the equation. How often killing a baby or killing a virgin or killing one of each. The ancient Hebrews would do it. The ancient Aztecs would do it. Like I don't know about every culture, but most cultures that I've looked at, sometime in the past have used human sacrifice as part of their little pigeon dance in order to assure like a rain or the sun to rise or the battle to go well, whatever it is.
I think that's a problem because, well, of course it is, but I think why that happens.
Let's not be so quick to dismiss it.
Yeah, let's talk this over. Here, let me get a little sip of coffee real quick.
You don't know that it didn't help the battle. You can't prove that.
It's true. So it's, that's one of those gray areas. But no, I think it's a problem because of, in particular, because we don't see ourselves we don't see ourselves as animals. We do now, many scientists and, science savvy people. We're just a different kind of animal that had the right kind of.
We're monkeys that learned how to put pants on.
Yeah, and language. Let us give, like, that lets me give you the ideas that I have in my head. You give me the ideas you have in your head, and we both benefit from.
It becomes like an exponential development of a species that others can't benefit from.
Yeah, division of labor. You've got learning. You've got like fast learning, because monkeys teach their children. They'll give them the stick. They give them a little stick, and they show them the anthill, and they show it doing.
Monkey see, monkey do, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So you get that kind of learning, but that's very, very limited. And like, think about. I always call language, when I tell parents this, I say language is your shortcut. You can teach children anything you want with behaviorism. You can also teach it with language, but don't get frustrated when language breaks down. They're monkeys, right? They're advanced monkeys. So like they're becoming like full-scale humans where we can take learning, abstract it, imagine what that behavior looks like, and then do it, and visualize it and then do it. And then pretty soon that's an automatic process. I just say something like wash the dishes, you already know what it looks like, you go do it. You can even probably listen to a podcast like this and not even think about what you're doing. But kids can't do that at first. And so I'm like, language is your shortcut, and it's your plan B. It's not it's your plan A as a joke, maybe. You can try it first. Just be like, go wash your hands and come back. And they come back with wet hands. You're like, did you use soap? No. You don't get mad. Just be like, oh, the subset of behaviors that he thinks of that is activated whenever I say the words wash your hands is hands wet, right? So I need to add hands wet. What else do I need to add that subset? Soap, and then rub. Soap, rub, wash hands, and then do that in that order. You're fine. So like, don't get frustrated. It's just language is weird. You have to abstract all those subsets, or abstract that, put those three subsets of those actual behaviors in it, and then come back. On top of that, you've got competing.
And as they get older, they'll learn how to bunch, things like that, and how to clump knowledge. But how does that relate to religions?
Well, yeah. So then you get like, you can see like, I still haven't figured out if this is like particularly. I know it sustains, superstitious beliefs, but I don't know how it started them. I'm still kind of trying to figure that out. Like, it sustains them obviously because of like, think about like prayer. You hear prayer works. So language is the shortcut. You hear that it works. And that's like a proxy for actually doing it yourself. It's like if you told me, if I said, David, how do I attack this? Like I need to, let's say French, something I don't know, that I didn't know about. I'd be like, David, how do I conjugate this? It looks like they put their subject before I don't know what's going on here. You could tell me how to do it. And then that's a shortcut. It basically serves as a proxy of me learning that through trial and error and any other things, like speaking to a French person and then eventually figuring it out. So it's a really quick little thing. But I think what happens is someone gives you that language. They say, pray to, whatever, for whatever you want. And then over time, you start doing that ritual. And then if it happens or not, and then what do they say? What's the genius part of that? They say pray incessantly. Right?
Pray always. So do not faint.
Yeah, so then you're that one pigeon, which they recorded, which was doing the head bob, which you can only see if you're in the YouTube one, but he's just going up and down the whole time because he thought that's what came out. Because the best part is, whenever they fixed it, and this one's hilarious, variable interval, which means, so, they're psychologists, they're fucking with these pigeons. I feel bad for them, but they messed with it. They said, instead of based on how many times they pressed the lever, let's do it, and this one really fucked them up. This is the worst one, was they said, let's do it on a variable amount of time. So it doesn't matter what they're doing. We're just going to set a little egg timer, and it literally went shh, and then it went and it was silent to the pigeon. They can't hear it, but it would go click, and as soon as they hit it, it would drop it down. These fucking pigeons I think you can
Just
YouTube
whatever they
this.
happened to be doing when the pellet came out.
It was hilarious. And so you get like, I mean, these pigeons, rather than, usually the other ones was like, had some kind of ritual involving tapping the lever a number of times. This one was like, oh man, there'd be this one pigeon who was trying to fly to the top and he'd press his head against it. One would stand on its head. I'm not fucking with you. The people did the weirdest things because they were hungry and they wanted to have some control over their environment. And so they assumed causality and like we do. And
which is useful most times, right? Like it's good to assume causality a lot of the time, especially for our ancestors. Wow, when that fruit turns a certain color and I shake the limb, it falls off. That's good to know. File that away. But it can lead us into these pitfalls. You saw Mad Max, right?
Mm-hmm. No, I haven't seen it yet.
Okay, there's this part in Mad Max, for anyone that's seen it, where they're running. I mean, the whole movie is basically a 2-hour chase scene. So there's a part where they're being chased. Spoilers. And one of the characters starts doing this weird thing with her hands, where she's like closing her eyes and muttering, and her hands are doing this like up and down motion and like making these little like almost like she's casting spells, like her fingers are wiggling. And someone asks her what she's doing, and she's like, I'm praying. And then they say, to who? And then she says, anyone that would listen. So you can see her kind of like trying to form these rituals. Like it was a nice world building moment where you're like, wait, is this something that she picked up from someone, or is she just trying to see what works, like out of desperation? But you can almost see these moments of desperation where you just try whatever works and then you don't die, right? Because people that it didn't work for are dead, so they're not passing that along. The ones that it did work for, they're like, wow, those specific hand motions, they got me out of that tight jam. I'm still allowed to tell about it. Pass that on to my daughter or my son.
Yeah, and that's what fucks us though is language. Like you get a little bit of in nature, you get a little bit of superstitious behavior. It's true, but most of it is functional. Like pigeons will come and flood the walks in like in New York, for example, whenever the street vendors are getting a lot of activity and lunch, or they get this functional behavior. Cats will check dumpsters at specific times of day because they've tried other times it didn't work out. But language fucks us because let's say in that example where that person's being chased and they're doing the wiggly thing, if someone sees that and then they survive, they don't attribute those two things, right? It's only that person who tried it and knew the intent of that trying that did that, right? But instead she was able to communicate that and give as a proxy to them, like they had actually done it themselves and saying, hey, I did this because I wanted this and look what happened, it worked. And then it's like, oh, and then it spreads like a fucking virus. So, I mean, like that's a really cool moment, and it depresses me sometimes because language just in so many ways fucks us. It helps us, but there's always little funny backdoors.
It's one of those things that we've evolved the ability to do it before we evolved like the mastery of it. Yeah. So, yeah, we are. They're the equivalent of monkeys finding automatic weapons sometimes. Like we're like, yeah, we got language. This should end well.
Hey, here's how to make a nuclear bomb. Teach me, he says, through your language. Like, it's writing and teaching it that allows us to store knowledge and then build upon it. So it gives us science, but it also can fuck us up in small ways. But
so do you have any superstitions that you use even though you know that they're not real, but they just kind of make you feel better?
Man, I used to pull up in basketball. I used to pull up my socks. It's really predominant in athletes,
right? Because like they've got such high payoff for when they succeed, and it's such small variables of things they can actually control. Like baseball was one of the biggest ways that you would see superstitions because it's such a small ball coming, and there's so many ways it could go wrong, and when it goes right, you're like, my lucky socks. That's why I never wash them.
That's one of the big criticisms people say to behaviors like myself. They say like, well, this doesn't work in humans. We know the difference. Like, I'm not just gonna be standing in front of my TV, bobbing my head up and down, and then it pops on because a short happens, and I'm like, oh, I just had to bob my head up and down. And I'm like, that's true. There needs to be a theoretical tie-in, or somebody have told us that it works before. Like we have to be able to make sense of it, and if we can't make sense of it, we'll drop it. But it's not true that we can't do this in humans if we set it up correctly. In other words, you can encounter this on a regular basis in life. And,
right.
You get like that high magnitude reinforcer that's variable ratio or variable interval, and so based on a behavior you do, and it randomly gives it to you, not every time, not every other time, but just randomly, or variable interval, like it gives it, like you get reinforced, but only at a certain specific time, and you never know when it's going to happen. So you just need to be like working, for example, if you're just sitting in your seat in your cubicle working, and then randomly you get like email from a loved one, or someone flirts with you on the internet if you're single. You're like, oh, I need to be here with Facebook open so that I can have that chance again, right? And so that's variable interval, right? Nothing you were doing at work that set that that flirty or flirter off
Just
to make
happened.
it just happened because you happen to be logged into Facebook or something, right? Well, whatever. And so suddenly going to keep that up like crazy. So once you get those two things, you do get a lot of superstitious behaviors, like not the Facebook thing, but you can get, especially with athletes, such high magnitude. Like a game is your career. Winning a game is what your career is. If you don't stop winning games, you stop having a career.
Right.
You get fired. So yeah, and like you said, such tight constraints of like what can be possible. So what does that do? It makes it more infectious. It's not that it, people can get any kind of, like from what they eat the night before. I do that with races a lot, actually. It's not superstitious, but I believe, well, in a way it is. But I feel like I'm like, well, this seems to give me nutrition that I need for the next day. But I still had bad races after I did that. So it is kind of superstitious.
So I would predict then, under this model, that the less we understand about causality, the more likely these superstitions are going to take hold in a human. So, for example, before we understood meteorology, rain dances develop. Now we don't get a lot of new people making rain dances because most people think about public education have at least a somewhat of an understanding of how weather works, or at least knowing that we can't control it.
But you're pray for rain. Like,
oh, that's true. There are still rain dances, but I think you see less new ones showing up, at least. I think that the more we understand causality, the less prone we are to falling into these new superstitions, which is why pigeons are so vulnerable to it.
True, yeah. Although, I mean, we literally call them rituals in OCD, and it's we have a way we beat these. And anxiety is the same way. Like somebody who is anxious, for example, this is how we address this. This is one of the modules is we do behavioral experimentation. So it's like critical thinking plus a scientific process. And you just say, all right, so it sounds like you're nervous about going to, let's say, the fair with your friends. Yeah, I'm super nervous because maybe she's socially anxious or he's socially anxious. Let's say it's a he. He's socially anxious. And I say, what is it that you predict might go wrong? And they say, well, I mean, what if I get there and then I have nothing to say, and they form into a group and I'm the out guy and they're walking around having fun and I can't say anything edgewise and I just feel stupid. And I'm like, okay, write that down. Let's see. There we go. What else might go wrong? And they go through a list. And then I say, what kind of probabilities do you assign these? And they're like, I don't know, like 80% chance that, I'll get kicked out of the in group. You're like, okay, 80%. And then you write them all down. And then you go try it. You go, okay, why don't you, I'm going to challenge you to go ahead and go to this activity anyway. And I'd like you to keep remember, you're a scientist. You have to tell me objective data. So, don't let any subjective stuff come in. You need to tell me, and you write down like exactly what happened. Okay. So you predict an exact thing, and then what does it happen? And so, because they're likely to, be like, it went bad. I told you. And you're like, what happened? Like, I fell. Well, you didn't predict falling, did you? You predict that they would be, whatever. So you make it very specific. But then afterwards you say, so what was the probability? And they're like, I guess it was lower, like 30% chance that would happen. And really it's probably like 2%, but still, any movement you reinforce. You're like, all right, so we learned something. It sounds like you're kind of catastrophizing some of your situations. You're almost, inhibiting yourself. And they're like, yeah, But anyway, so what we do is we use the scientific method and critical thinking. So I would think that, we do this in a lot of aspects, but I would think that, yeah, anything we can learn for critical thinking and objectivity and testing our beliefs would help that. Yeah,
because I think one thing that's comorbid with superstition is confirmation bias, the inability to prove yourself wrong. I do this test. It was in the New York Times recently, a version of it, but I used to do one with my students where I'd write 3 numbers on a board. I'd write like 2, 4, 6, and I'd say there's a rule that governs the progression of these numbers. I want you to figure out what the rule is. You can test any 3 numbers yourself, and I'll tell you yes or no whether they fit the rule or not, whether they obey the rule that's in my head. You can try as many times as you want, but when you figure out what the rule is, write it down, then you can't guess anymore. And so I'll put it on the board, and what will happen inevitably is like 2, 4, 6. And most of the kids, I'd say probably 75 to 80% of them will say 2, 4, 6. What about 8, 10, 12, and I'll come by and I'll say yes, and they're like, okay, I think I've got it. I think they're going up by 2, but I want to check. I want to check myself. And here's the key moment. 75% of these kids, 80% of these kids, when they say, I want to check my rule, I think it goes up by 2, I'm going to try this, 22, 24, 26, and I'll say yes again. And they're like, okay, got it. I've checked it, I've double checked it, this is the rule, and they'll write down it goes up by 2. And then 20-something% of the kids will be, they'll say, okay, I think it goes up by 2, I want to check myself. And instead of confirming it, they'll say 21, 22, 23. and I'll say yes. I'm like, wait, that's not what I thought. I'm going to try and disprove the rule, and they'll try and prove themselves wrong. What about 19, 18, 17? I'll say no. And then using that, they'll ask a lot more questions, but they'll figure out that the rule was they're just numbers that go up. They're ascending integers. So it can be any number as long as the one in front of it is bigger than the one behind it. And the kids, that small minority of kids who get it, are the ones who aren't afraid to get that no answer. It's just, we don't like to be proven wrong, even if we're trying to find truth. Like these kids, there was no emotional attachment to this rule. It was just a random rule I had in my head. It wasn't like a religion or a rain dance or a sacrifice. It was just something that it was the first thing that occurred to them, and therefore they gave it priority because they didn't want to be wrong. It's this weird thing we have in our psychology where just getting the no answer makes us sad, even if it gets us closer to the right answer. So I think between confirmation bias and then what you were talking about with this variable reinforcers, I think those two are a potent mix to make religions happen.
Yeah, have you ever heard of the Wasted card problem?
No, what's that?
Okay, this one got me. I have to admit, it got me, and I was a big fan of logic. I took the classes. I thought I had this stuff figured out, but it just shows that, like, man, you can still get got. This one is weird. It feels weird, at least to me. It did. It goes like this. So you've got cards, and on each side of the card you've got a letter. On the other side you've got a number. So I'm gonna lay 4 cards out in front of you, and really it's just a picture. But then you show it to the participant, and it's A, B, 4, and 7. Those are the 4 cards in front of them. A, B, 4, 7. So 2 letters, A, B, 2 numbers, 4, 7. So I say, which card, and there's a stipulation of this that you have to add because it's not in the original experiment, but what you have to say is turn over the fewest amount of cards to prove or to determine whether the following statement is false. Okay? Quote, if a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side. So that to prove that false, you have to turn over as few cards as possible. And I don't know if you want to try that, but I don't
so
care.
So A4, B7 on the other side, it's got like, so if it's A on one side, it's got a number on the other side, and if it's 7 on one side, it's got a letter on the other side?
Yes. Mm-hmm. And so you're trying to determine if the following statement is false, and that's A, B, or sorry, if a card has a vowel on one side, then it has an even number on the other side.
So if you turn over the A and you see an even number on the other side, that doesn't necessarily mean it's always going to have that. I don't think you can prove it false with only just one example, can you?
Do you want the answer? I mean, no, you can't. I'll tell you that. No, here's the problem. Out of, like, I can't remember how many students or how many. But it's something like in the 90th percentile. Almost every time we run this, get it wrong, and they say, "Oh, well, A and 4," right? You flip over A, you see if there's an even number. You flip over 4 because it's an even number, and if there's a letter, then you got it. But it's not actually true. It's because we're looking. Our whole way of going about it, it's irrelevant of the content of this thing. Because people like explain it to me. The participants get angry, and I always explain it to them. But the point is I always try to really de-emphasize that. I'm like, content is not important. It's all psychology. There's something we're going to tell you the whole time. Content is not important. Your process is what we're concerned about. So like, if you come to me in a marital dispute, I don't give a shit about what you're talking about unless it's like abuse or something that I immediately intervene on. I care about how you resolve it. So I'll be like, okay, that sounds like a problem. Why don't you guys discuss it? And they're like, whoa, okay, well, I think it's rude when you do this. And I'll be like, all right, so let's take a pause there. And I said, I think it's rude when blah, let's redo that. So I work on the process, and because I'm making you a better machine so that you can get your content for yourself.
Right.
And so the thing here is they're approaching it with a confirmation bias. They're trying to see if it's true. So like, and remember, they explicitly said if it's false, but they're trying to determine, oh, they're only testing the premise of if this is true, then these will be the 2 correct cards. But that's not the right way of going about it. So anyway, the whole point of that card task is to show like almost nobody gets this right, even college students, almost anyone.
You have to try and prove yourself wrong, and that's not instinctive.
Yeah. Even when you're explicitly told to do it, we have a hard time doing it. We have such a bias against it. We're hardwired, and we have a strong learning history of testing things like that. So like all it does is it argues for Bayesian theorem. I don't know if you're familiar with those sorts of ways of approaching like statistics and things, but it's basically it's like signal detection. So you have to take into account the misses as well as the hits,
Right.
Which almost like most of statistics doesn't do that. So, and problem solving in humans.
And with life or death situations, which is where a lot of when religion started to creep up or flourish, are when these life or death situations were very common, right? Like you turn when the stakes are high and you feel like you have no control. That's when superstitions are going to happen more often. I would imagine. Does that sound right?
I think so. Now that's not something that I explicitly know, but that sounds theoretically sound. I think.
Okay.
I would think that, like, I guess, hold on, let me see. Yeah, I would predict that when the stakes are high, because you want anxiety to be high, right? You want some motivation to believe.
Like I might die, or I might receive a great reward. Like I might win the World Series.
Yeah.
And
yeah. Because then you get. Well, I'm doing confirmation bias by looking for a true, but I do notice myself thinking right now that that you get people who don't even explicitly believe what they're doing. They'll be like, I don't even know if this really works, but I'm still going to do it,
Right. Like Tim would rub his dice all over his chest before he rolled his hit points in Dungeons and Dragons. He knows this doesn't help, but it's such a big, you only get so many hit points, you only level up so often.
Yeah, and we encourage it, like let's say it was, we all did our turns in this round, and he's the last one, and there's like 8 hit points left. All he has to do is roll it's just any number that's a hit, and we're like, dude, Tim, and he's like, oh, and then we're like, give it the nipples, give it the lucky nipples, Tim. Like, we would encourage him to do it because it doesn't hurt if you're wrong, and if you're right, then great.
It's Pascal's wager. So you've got that going on. Stakes are high, and if the stakes are high, it's usually life or death, right? Like you're going into war, and you want to know if the gods are with you, or you have a disease and you're going to die. And when it doesn't work, not only is confirmation bias happening, but usually you're dead. So only the people for whom it worked are surviving, and therefore it's like even weeding out some of the misses anyway that way. So like death is helping to weed out the misses along with confirmation bias.
Oh man, and then you've got that. So whenever we have a success, we like to celebrate it with loved ones or with close people. We like to spread that success or that report of success to social circles. Depending on how large it is, depends on your level of extroversion. But so that's what are you gonna do? You're gonna attribute to why it happened too. So you're gonna be like, oh, and the bigger the story, the more disseminated it is, right? Like I almost died, then I prayed, and then the car missed me.
Yeah, and we're wired to love stories, so the bigger you can exaggerate it, the more we give you social reinforcement. Like, oh, well, then what happened? And then you're already altering your memory because you're being rewarded for that. So you're like, yeah, and the car barely missed me. I leapt out of the way at the nick of time.
Oh, there's an interesting study that I wish I could do if religion wasn't off the handle. Plus, there's practical constraints. I got to get out of school soon, so I don't want to stay here forever. But I really want to track. This is something I'm very interested in. Tracking reports of miraculous interventions over time. So like a longitudinal study, because I have seen this personally, but this is just anecdote, that people will start what would that be called? Embezzling their story, not embezzling.
Embellishing.
Thank you. Embellishing their story over time. And yes, we were youths, so maybe this is a little different, but I think that's it. All the theoretical principles suggest that it probably is true because you get this social reinforcement, especially when they're like, why don't you stand in front of the church and tell everyone your story? You're like, well, fuck. I mean, you can't mess up then. Look at Pentecostals. They fall down and wiggle on the floor because they don't want to be embarrassed so bad and they want it to be true. So,
and then memory is fallible, right? Every time you access a memory, you're kind of altering it. It's like Schrodinger's cat, like just observing it kind of changes it. Yep. So there's a lot of things going into play there. It's interesting. It's fun to, without a time machine, we can't really know, but we can see other religions. We can see modern religions form. We can watch cargo cults form. We know what our species tends to do, so it's pretty easy to conjecture how religions that are lost in the mist of time showed up.
Yeah, there's a lot of that, it wouldn't hurt. It's even in Pascal's razor, but what does it hurt if you just go ahead and do religion? Then it's and then you got this big payoff of eternal life, which is great. But and then you just get the people who even stay in church after they don't believe because the social reinforcement. You get this. You got. But I don't know if you've heard Sam Harris's recent podcast. Have you?
I heard one where he debated Dan Carlin. Is that the one you're talking about?
Oh no. This one, maybe it's the one before that. Actually, it's he interviews the girl something Phelps who left the Westboro Baptist Church.
Yeah, I haven't listened to it, but I saw it show up.
It's really interesting. I mean, it's not that interesting, but it's interesting because he keeps trying to get. Sam Harris seems to think that people change their mind by reasonable arguments, and he's not wrong. But that's not the primary modality that people are changing their minds. Like the vast majority of people. So he's working in like the 3% that will actually change their entire lifestyle and be like, I no longer want to be a Christian, and I don't care what my loved ones think, just because they heard an argument. And I don't think he understands the level of absurdity that is compared to if you really want to move. I agree that needs to be done, but I think he thinks that it has a larger effect size than it does. But not that he shouldn't be doing it. I love that. I love it. I'm just saying. But with this girl, he whenever she fuck, what were we talking about? I got lost.
When you were talking about why people change their minds, Ted 2, dumb movie, but I ended up seeing it for, I talked about it on the last podcast just by random happenstance. And Morgan Freeman, they're doing this kind of, it's like a none too subtle like gay marriage kind of debate, but it's like teddy bear rights. And they lose, I'm going to spoil it because it's a stupid movie, and but anyway, they lose a case, and then Morgan Freeman says, do you know why you lost that case? You were right logically, but juries don't care about logic. People don't care about logic. You lost the emotional battle. When you lose the emotional battle, you're not going to win someone over with an argument 9 times out of 10. And I think that's what we kind of forget when, as atheists, when we're discussing religion with people, we think we can logically prove something, and yes, that sometimes works, but it's not as effective as appeals to emotion.
I know, and you know what the worst part about that is? This really, oh man, it fucking breaks my heart, because I would say it makes me angry, but it doesn't. It's like whenever you see whenever you know how something works, and then you see people failing it, and then people you respect like kind of failing in it. It's like let's say you specialized in parenting, right? And you were like the world's best parent researcher, and you knew exactly how to do it. And then someone around, like your best friends, are kind of failing at parenting. They're doing great, but there are certain aspects they're failing of, and then they're like, I don't know, and there's no answer to this, and that kind of thing. You're like,
there is, though.
There is, and there clearly is right in front of you, but you don't want to say it, because then you're a dick. You can't be to your friend and be like, well, here's how you should be a parent, because then you sound like a douche. You just come off as obtuse. And so that's the same thing here. A lot of people who convert from religion or to religion, but typically from religion, in my experience, they'll attribute it to they'll be like, oh, it's like this. It's like how religious people believe. You plant a seed and then it was watered over time. And I'm like, nope, not how it works. I understand that we are horrible at understanding why we do our behaviors, because we have to use a retrospective process, and we just showed how confirmation bias ruins that. So they think to themselves, I'm a reasonable person. That's how they identify. So they think, what reason was it that changed my behavior? And almost all of American colloquialism has to do with, what did they say to you? What did they do? What happened? Instead of like, how did you feel about it? Which is the correct question. Right. And I think once you make the stakes low enough, the person will leave. And once sure, you can get cognitive dissonance and crank that up, but that just doesn't change most people's mind. They'll willfully be ignorant. So really, it's about making them comfortable with it, and then making the stakes low to leave. And so a lot of people who are atheists now will attribute it to some argument they heard, and what's worse is it's almost like these testimonial stories where it becomes more and more solidified in their mind over time. And I'm like, that's not why you did it, though. I mean, maybe it is that person, but there are people I definitely know that didn't happen, and I'm like, and now they're attributing it to that, and I'm like, no, you came from that pretty cocksure that you were right still. So I don't think that was, in fact.
And this is the root of a lot of like the daycare sex abuse hysteria, alien abduction memories. Lots of things kind of go back to this idea of this is how I remember it, and this is how it is. My memory is perfect. Like memory fallibility is at the root of a lot of these like confirmation bias issues.
Yes.
I would recommend for those of you who want to read like a social psychologist kind of pop culture, like not too, I mean, it's not pop culture, but it's a light read. Mistakes Were Made But Not By Me by Carol Tavris and Elliot Aronson. Kind of goes through a lot of this research that we have about like false memories, false confessions, criminal interrogations and where that goes wrong, police perjury. Like it all kind of goes back to this confirmation bias idea.
Man, you are right. And for those of you who are in a relationship or have been, or for those of you who have had a roommate or any relationship whatsoever, God damn it, do you guys and myself, and I still do this, but you have to be untrained to this. God damn it, do we obsess about memories? Like, yes, no, I remember how it happened. You said this. And the other person's like, no, I did not. And I'm like,
I would not say that.
Drop that shit. Drop it. It doesn't matter. Maybe one of you's right. Maybe neither of you is right, but you're both fucking sure you're right. So that's getting us nowhere by hashing it out. Like, at best, one of you is right, and you're going to say it perfectly. And I'm saying at best because this does not happen, but you're going to say it perfectly, and the other person's going to be like, "Man, they did say that, but fuck him for being such a dick." So they'll be like, "That's not how I remember it." And then you're like, "Yes, you do." And then I'm like, "That doesn't look. What are you doing?" Just be like, memories are weird, and then just move on. And if you could just accept the fallibility of memories, you get less conflict in your conflict resolution.
Yeah.
So serves us as well.
Yeah, we had a conversation 2 years ago. We were talking about your wedding, and we both remember something completely the opposite of how it happened, or how the other person says it happened, and we're just like, we don't even talk about it anymore because there's no way to know. Nobody was filming that day, so it's just like, all right, who knows?
Yeah, it being able to suspend that's I think is super helpful, at least in my experience. So, yeah, that would be awesome. But
cool.
Yeah, superstitious beliefs, man. That's it's a big dirty package, but all that stuff's in there.
A huge dirty package.
Oh, how big is it though? Like,
huge.
Is it
It's a big dirty? It's dirty though.
I mean, if you had to put it into inches and give me like an idea of how it. No, I'm done.
All right. Cool. So that wraps up for the week. Any closing thoughts?
Oh, let me check our feedback. I have not done that yet. Closing thoughts. I don't know. I think just in general, I hope that there's something interesting that we're saying here that changed lives. I know it sounds cheesy, but I really kind of like doing that. That's the whole point of podcasting. I hope that some people get a better quality of life. So anyway,
if
you guys have
prestige,
yeah, for that podcast money,
that podcast
the negative
money.
dollars. So many negative
all the
dollars
podcast money and podcast groupies.
Yeah, but we didn't get any emails. We had a couple tweet things, but it was nothing substantial. People saying some crazy shit on there.
We do.
But then, we got a few posts in the Facebook page. That's becoming a little more active. There's a few people that are pretty active on it, which is fun. But did I can't remember. Did I? No, I already talked about that. Never mind. I think I did. Talked about the 4th of July thing, how I was challenging the priests to pray for it to stop raining while I was running.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I was like, hey, make it stop. Pray that it will stop raining. And none of them would do it because they fucking know it won't work. Somewhere deep inside, they know because of experience what will and won't work could look like it will work if they do it.
There was a great article that Tommy posted in the Facebook group about Christian couples filing for divorce en masse to defy the gay marriage ruling. And like his comment is classic. He's like, "Isn't divorce not allowed in the Bible? Lol." You're not doing traditional biblical marriage. Divorce. Yes.
And there was a really provocative one, I think, at least for me, where this is something going around, and I didn't comment on it. This is one of those that I put up on a tab, and I meant to comment at a time where I was not at work, and I didn't. Shit. So Ryan put up one about, I don't know if you saw this, a religious trauma syndrome.
Yes, I actually read that because I actually have recurring nightmares about being on a mission. Like once a year, I'll dream that I'm trapped as a missionary, and I just can't. Like I can't come home. I wake up feeling like relieved that I'm not out there again. Like I know it's not like battlefield trauma, but it's not PTSD, but there's not a word for it. This is the first time I've actually seen a word for it. It's just religious trauma.
As I do everything, I would like to give positives and negatives on it. Positives is that everything is on a spectrum, right? Like I had a nightmare less than a year ago of being in grade school and having no pants on. It happened. And I woke up and I was like, oh man, I had that fucking dream. That's weird. It's been a while for that. But like you get these kind of residual fears that will manifest in dreams or that kind of thing. But so there's some truth to it, and the fact that there's a cluster of symptoms that seem to gravitate around this kind of life event or life stressor leaving the church, and it's a big life stressor. So those are the things that I think that are really going for it. So for the bad part though, trauma, first of all, take that out of this thing. I think that word is a one I've been fighting for, like at conferences, in research. It's not with every professional I've met. I'm like, stop saying trauma. Trauma may be on a dimension, but we do have to draw a line at some point. Where do we call this trauma, and where do we call this just life events, right? I broke my toe and I saw my bone sticking out. Was that traumatic? No. I mean, did it freak me out? Yeah. and did I have a nightmare about it later? Sure, yeah. And occasionally I think about it and go, ooh, but it's not like you don't relive it. Like whenever if I have like a flashback, it's like it feels like you're there. You're like, oh fuck, like it's scary as shit. And so like it's just different. And like, a rape, for example, could do that too. You have this flashback where you're re-experiencing all of a sudden, and you have this visceral response. And we have that, on a continuum, sure. But I would draw a line at this one, and I would just call this adjustment disorder, probably, because really you're just changing a big part of your life, which is adjustment disorder. Let's say you have to move, you forcibly have to move. So you get this in refugees a lot, people who have like a big life change that they had to do. And some of their family followed them, some didn't. And then you're noticeably fucked up after that a little bit. You just, you got problems adjusting to the new life. It's different. Things are weird. And
it's not like that, but you're taught, you don't get the skills you need to survive in the real world. And you get a lot of, like the article talks about, telling you that you're weak, that you're dependent, that you should lean not onto your own understanding. Like a lot of people who come out, especially out of fundamentalist religions, they feel shitty about things that they shouldn't, like they'll get nightmares about hell, or they'll feel like they're worms, and that's just being told that throughout their whole lives. Like it's gonna be, it's not like watching your friend get blown up by an IED, but it's gonna make you at a disadvantage when you want to be like a healthy, well-adjusted adult.
Yeah, I agree. I think that they've got some ground to stand on, but I would just call that depression, or because of depression comes about because of a cognitive distortion, right? Like you have this idea, it's usually an overgeneralization of a global, local, or future event, right? So like I'm losing at work and that sucks, and then you start generalizing like I am a sucky person, and it's an attractive thought, and we have a negative bias for that, so it starts happening, it starts feeding each other, it becomes unfalsifiable, and then we believe it. We're just like, I'm a shitty person. And so that's happening here. It just has a different causal root. But I still say that, or I still, from everything I can tell by looking at this, there's some remarkable things about it, and it's that you feel like you're shit, but you also get people who feel, I feel like that's almost part of being religious more than it is about leaving religion. Because when you leave religion, a lot of people that I've talked to, and this is just anecdotal, but they'll say, I feel like a weight is lifted off my shoulders. Like I'm not so, especially the guilty ones, the big guilt-based religions. I'm free to do whatever I want, and then you get this kind of wondering for a while, what should I do with my life?
Yeah,
but I think I would just call it religious syndrome, and I would call it call it being religious, and then I would say leaving religion would be the adjustment disorder, right? That would be you trying to wiggle into a normal life after being abused for so long, because someone telling you you're shit and that you're completely dependent upon them is
an abusive
really shitty, but it helps a ton that it's socially accepted. So like if everybody was abusing their wife and telling them you have to be here because you're shit, which they did for millennia, then it's not as bad for you. But if you know it's wrong, like once you visited another nation and you're like, oh shit, I'm a human, then it starts to have this, discordant feeling.
Right.
And so I think that's what you're dealing with when you leave religion, and that's totally a normal process, totally understandable, and does have repercussions. It's an adjustment disorder. But I think that the true problem is religious syndrome, which would be in religion, you are being abused and it's being masked. Your symptoms are being masked or subsided, or you're not having as much discordant with it because you haven't experienced the other side. If you put me back in religion right now, I'm not going to love it, right? I'm going to hate it,
right? Because
I've been out. So this is actually a better place to be, and it's just about adjusting to this new life without the skills. That would be my take on it.
Right. I think it's yeah, that makes sense. I mean, the word trauma, I think, is what's throwing you, but everything else is exactly what they're describing. You just don't want to use the trauma because that word is overused or overdiagnosed.
Well, maybe I think the fundamental problem, though, would be, like I said, I would flip it. I would call it religious syndrome would be while you're in religion and just the symptoms are being masked because of the huge social acceptance of it, and so you're not having all this discordance that would normally cause those symptoms. Like if you put me back in right now, I would be very depressed and anxious and be like, how can I get out?
Yeah, and I think like it's something that's harmful, but because you're so immersed in it, it's like it's like leaving the arrow in the wound, right? Like you don't want to do that. It's not a good long-term strategy, but when you take the arrow out, you might bleed out. The arrow is kind of helping you keep the blood in, even though it's the cause of the problem.
Or I would almost say it's like taking an arrow inside of a Bacta tank. the back to tank would be social approval and having everyone around you love it and validate it. And then you still got very real injury. And once you get out of that back to tank, you're fucked. You got to deal with that. But for now, grow it around. It's good. Back to tank for those non-nerds is the Star Wars. Like,
right. But, you know, like, that's just like the common, like the ideal situation is not to be shot with an arrow. But the arrow being in the wound is somewhat more helpful than it being ripped out right away. So
yeah.
It's kind of like the ideal situation is not having religion, but having religion and not knowing, you know, not leaving it is going to hide some of those symptoms.
Yeah, yeah. I think they're just gonna have a tough time with that, with the trauma in the title, and then also because the religion is just so dominant in our culture. I would sneak it in is what I would do. I know that sounds shitty, but it's for the good of people. This would be a questionable thing to do, but it would be for everyone's greater good. So I think it's okay. I would sneak it in with a different name.
See those studies like with a control group, you know, where they say like people in religions are more well-adjusted or happier or whatever. I would love to see a support group where religious people are the minority, like Tokyo or Stockholm, Sweden, or something, where to see if those numbers still hold true, or if it's just having a support group that ends up giving you those benefits.
But you'd almost need to, I was going to say, you almost need to invent your own religion. You could call it your religion. But that would be, I don't think you get that past the ethics board, but call it something else and then have people sign on to it and have people not sign on to it and then measure them over time. That way they don't have the social support of their friends because they don't know what the fuck they're doing, but they are doing weird shit. Like, you know, maybe instead of praying, they have to stand on their hands, and then maybe instead of guilt, we substitute something in that causes anxiety, like fear or something. But I don't know. You have to mess around a lot, but that would be very cool.
It's just they always talk about the benefits of being religious, and I'm like, yeah, it's super beneficial when you're in America. Maybe it's not so beneficial to be religious in Norway. Like, let's compare it to where it's not the social norm.
Yeah, exactly. Because a lot of that has to do with the fact that we believe that atheists have less morals. Even, this is funny, there was a study out recently, but I won't get into it because we're almost at time. But the psychologist Will Gervais, which is awesome because that sounds like maybe Ricky's brother, but he showed that even people who explicitly deny believing in God harbor the intuition that acts such as serial murder and incest are more representative of atheists than of religious people. And that's just on average. You know, not every atheist, but that means we're almost condemning our own group, or we still have some residual self-doubt or a doubt of our own. You know what I mean? Like that word was used so much maybe that tied in with like a godless heathen, that it kind of, there's some residual effect. So anyway, well, cool. I hope that wasn't too much of me talking because of the science part, but still, hopefully it was entertaining. Thanks for the feedback. Great article. It was very, very provocative. A lot of very thought-provoking.
Yes. I'm going to now go watch Fox News host deliver an unhinged anti-LGBT sermon about Chick-fil-A being the official chicken of Jesus. That sounds like an amazing rant, and I can't wait to listen to it.
Awesome. I'm gonna probably not do that. I don't know what I'm gonna do, but yeah, do something different. But thanks for joining us. Hey, and if you want to give us feedback, remember you can always send it to the God Theory Podcast at gmail.com. Join the Facebook group. It's a good group, good people. Facebook.com/groups/God Theory Podcast. Come join us. Post on there anything you see relevant, and or any questions or ideas for episodes, which happens a lot in our other podcasts. So.
Right. And be sure to leave us reviews on Stitcher or iTunes or wherever you are listening to us, because that makes us happy, and it's a good way to keep more of these episodes coming.
Yeah. All right. Well, until then, I guess we'll sign off. So I'll talk to you guys later. Bye.